Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about guitar tone. What are the differences between guitar tone, guitar sound, and in my opinion, the top 5 areas of different things that affect guitar tone, and some basic things about those and what you can do to change those. Stay tuned. So, if this is your first time here, I'm Nick. I'm a guitar player from Detroit, but I also like to do a lot of other creative things like videos, little indie films I'm starting to do here and there, and I do travel a lot, and of course I play guitar. So today we're going to talk about guitar tone. Now, I'm the admin on a few different forums on Facebook. I've been a teacher for a long time. I've been playing for about 30 years. I've been playing in tons of bands and hundreds of shows. So although I'm not the most die-hard core professional, I have toured professionally, I have done a few things like that, but I do know a lot about guitar tone and a fair amount over the years. So with that in mind, I'd like to talk a little bit about the basics of guitar tone because there's so many different things that affect guitar tone. First of all, what's the difference between guitar tone and guitar sound? Well, they're pretty similar. Sound is a very general word. Things can sound this way, they can sound this way, they can be loud. Sound can affect volume, it can affect things like that, but it's a very general term, sound. Tone has to do a little bit more with the quality and the pleasantness or unpleasantness of the sound that you're hearing. And we're going to talk about what I consider the 5 main areas of different things that affect guitar tone. And those 5 main things are your guitar, your amp, your accessories that you use, the location you're in, and even the player and things that you actually do yourself. So let's start with the guitar. Now, depending on whether you have an electric guitar or an acoustic guitar, there are different parameters that affect tone. With an acoustic guitar, you want to look at the actual wood that it's made out of. The golden word when you're looking for an acoustic guitar is solid. If it says mahogany, if it says pine, maple, whatever, not pine, but whatever you want to look at, spruce, unless it says the word solid, then it's not solid. If it's not solid, it's laminate. And laminate is pretty much plywood. They're layers plied together. Solid wood's going to give you a much better tone, and it gets better over age. Laminate is going to give you an okay tone, and it gets worse with age because the more you play, the more the layers start like rattling and ungluing, and they start getting more bassy and not very good and unfocused. With an electric guitar, it's a little bit different. The woods do affect it to a point. The electronics affect a little bit so much, but the woods can affect somewhat of the character of the tone, and it can affect some of the sustain as well too. Pickups. Pickups are something that you have in electric guitars, and the pickup electronics on them can affect the tone a lot depending on how they're wired, whether it's a single coil, dual coil, a humbucker, or however, or the various different tonal variations that you can put into a pickup can affect. Active pickups are things that actually have batteries in them and they actively change the sound. So you can change a little bit more EQ on them, they get a little more hotter signal, they have a certain type of tone to them. Passive pickups have nothing but the normal magnets in them and no electronics in the guitar to change the tone. Your actual knob settings on the guitar, the volume switch. The volume knob. The volume is more than just a volume actually. The more you have it all the way up, then you have full gain, high gain. The more you back off the volume a little bit, you'll not only just take that sound and make it a little bit quieter, but it actually rolls off the gain a little bit. So you can actually get a full range of different things from a guitar depending on how you back off on the volume. Have it all the way up for a solo, have it down like about 7 or 8 when you're strumming a little bit, back it down to about 4 if you want to make it sound not really like an acoustic, but a little less aggressive. And also on both guitars, things like strings actually make a big difference. You'll notice it a little bit more on an acoustic guitar. Certain strings will make your guitar sound a lot different, whether you're putting in phosphor bronze, whether you're putting in 8020s, whether you're putting in some kind of normal uncoated strings or coated strings like elixirs. Those things can affect the tone quite a bit and make a big difference as to how it plays and to how long your tone stays on an acoustic guitar. The second factor of your tone is the amplifier, and I think this is a very overlooked one. I see a lot of younger guitar players or newer guitar players will have a really nice guitar. They'll have the top line guitar and electronics in them. They'll have all these different effect pedals. And they'll buy this cheap little amplifier and wonder why it doesn't sound amazing. They'll try to put all these different electronics into their pedals and their guitar, figuring out why their little practice 10-watt amp doesn't sound great, and it doesn't work like that. Amp is probably the biggest factor of electric guitar tone than any other thing that you can possibly buy. Now the types of amps and the different features of amps are endless. There are 2 main types of amps. There's tube amps, solid state amps. Tube amps actually have the old vacuum tubes in there, and there's a certain way that the tone, I'm not an electronics expert, there's a certain way that the tone goes through those tubes to re-simulate the tone and warms up and goes through the electronics of the circuit board and comes back out. That's got a really nice warm tone to them. And not only do they sound good, they really feel there's like a tactile feedback when you play with them that just makes it really enjoyable to play on, a good tube amp. Tube amps also sound better. Usually the higher you crank them, they sound better, they sound full. And if you take a big, more powerful tube amp and tone it all the way down, that's usually not its best sound. Now, some examples of popular tube amps are Orange, Marshall, Mesa Boogie, even PV and some other amps, and Fender. Now, not all the amps they make are tube amps. However, they're all very well known for making very good tube amps. Now, solid state amps are different. They're all done electronically. All the gain, all the distortion, all the overdrive, all the different effects on the into these amps are made all electronically with circuits and various different algorithms and patterns. Now, tube amps usually, to me, sound better, and for a lot of guitar players, they sound better, and again, feel better to play. However, as time goes on, there's a lot of different solid state and modeling amps, which model the sound of a tube amp, that are getting better and better at not only just replicating the sound of it and being good at higher volumes, but they actually feel like they're playing on tube amps. A good example is the Blackstar ID Core 40 that I use on this channel a lot. Great amp. It's by far one of my favorite amps out of anything. And I'm a big tube guy in general, so that's pretty impressive to me. And besides the types of amps, tubes or solid state amps, each amp and each manufacturer has its own voicing. So Fender amps have a certain tone to them. Marshall amps have a certain tone to them. Mesa Boogies have a certain tone to them. Soldano, Dumbles, every amp that you can think of, Roland, they all have their own certain tonal characteristics to them. And yes, you can make them all kind of sound like a similar generic tone if you want them to, but they all have their own signature sounds to them and tones to them, and sometimes are more pleasing to different genres of music or to the player themselves. Now, in addition to those, you have the amp cabinetry, what the cabinet's made out of. Whether it's really heavy, thick wood will make the sound a little bit more bassy, a little heavier. The speaker is a big thing used. People swap out speakers and really tweak their speakers to get a certain sound. Whether the cabinet in the back is open, partially closed, completely closed, those things affect the tone of the amp as well. I'll cover this a little bit later in location, but another thing that affects it is the location of the speaker to where you are. If you have your amp on the ground, it's going to sound a little bit different. If you have it in the air a little bit, like on a stand, it can actually affect the tone a little bit. You can do different things with the bass. Number 3 on the list of things that can affect tone are your accessories on your guitar. Things like cables, your cords, your cables. If you don't have a really good cable, good cable won't make you sound better, but it'll keep the validity of your tone better. Like if you have a good tone in your guitar and a good tone in your amp, and you have a crappy cable and it's not really replicating that sound the right way and connecting to it, then that's going to affect your tone. A cheap cord that you buy for $6 that's not shielded can have things like cell phones and different lights affect it and make static and make a lot of noise in your signal and your sound in general and your tone, and those can affect your tone a lot as well too. So every little part of your signal chain needs to be where you want it to be to keep your tone the way you want it to be. Pick, your guitar pick. Depending on the material, depending on how sharp the point is, that can affect your tone. You notice that sometimes with electric, a really good thick heavy pick that you might play a lot of metal with on an electric guitar might make your acoustic guitar sound a little too bassy and too thick. A nice bright pick that might make your acoustic sound great might not be your favorite on electrics. So the material and the shape of a pick can actually affect your tone. Any effects pedals you buy, whether it's a multi-effects unit or whether they're separate pedals, will definitely have a change. That's the purpose of them, is to actually change the tone on your guitar. So those can affect tone to a great, and depending on which ones you have, what order you have them in, whether you have them in front of your amp or through the signal loop, and what settings you have on those, you can get an infinite amount of tones from your guitar just from combining all those. And especially with the stomp box pedals, there are different types of pedals. For instance, you get a true bypass, which fully takes your signal and doesn't change it at all if the effect is off. And then you have something that's buffered, where even if you shut the pedal off, if it's in your signal chain, it's still going to muddy your tone up a little bit. You might notice that. Some older Boss pedals in particular, I've noticed that can really have that pronounced muddy sound even when they're off. Fourth thing is your location. I talked about this in sound checks a while back. Depending on where your amp is, the way it's set up, depending on your room that you're playing it in, depending on how your hard surfaces are, depending on how your soft surfaces are, depending on how much ambience you have in there, the reflections of your sound, all the different areas where your actually sound signals are bouncing off of and coming back to you, everything that bounces off is going to affect the sound of it. Even mixed with other instruments, it's going to affect the sound. A Mesa Boogie that sounds really good in this particular scenario by myself is going to sound completely different when it's just me and another person, somebody else playing, because now you have sound frequencies that are canceling each other out a little bit, and then it can get really complicated with things. Depending on your amp and the quality of your electronic pickups, depending on whether you have like cheaper single coils that are kind of noisy combined with maybe a cheaper cord and some kind of a solid state amp that's really kind of hissy and loud and push to the limit. And if you have lights like fluorescent lights or some kind of different lights that make noise or electronic noise, or you have a phone too close to it, that can affect your tone because you'll now have a lot of hiss. And you won't have a nice clear tone, you'll have a very noisy tone. Even the outlet you're plugging into, if you plug into an outlet that's not properly grounded, that can affect your tone. That can make it maybe a little bit different tone, but it'll definitely make it a little bit noisier than it should be. And the last one, number 5, different things that can affect your tone, is you, the player. Now, besides the different kind of styles you want to play, there's a lot of things that affect your hands and just the basic mechanics on what affects your tone. Basically, you need to have pretty strong hands if you're going to play guitar the right way. I see a lot of younger players and newer players saying, well, their normal guitar that they play is just too hard to play. What's easier to play? Well, it's much better to have stronger hands to play your guitar than to just get a lesser guitar to accommodate the fact that your hands aren't strong enough. It's much better to practice and get your hands up to speed, because accommodating weaker hands to give them a smaller guitar or a cheaper guitar or a easier to play guitar is not going to help you at all. So you want to make sure you have strong hands. And how do you do that? Well, you can do it in the gym. You can do it with hand exercises. You can do it by playing a lot more. You can practice it through running scales, playing songs, playing, even if you're not in a band, play a set of music. If you know 10 songs, play it, like write them out in the list, play them like you're actually playing a show or something like that, and play them start to finish from end to end over a half-hour period. Think of it as gym time for guitar. You need to be able to go to your 5Ks and your 10Ks and your marathons and your mud runs to be able to put strength in your hand so that it can actually play pretty much whatever you want. You want to be able to do bends really well. You want to have a really good strong vibrato. All these different things will give you control over your string. And control on your string is a huge, huge thing, because you need to be able to control exactly how long that note sustains, how much it wavers, how accurate it is, how fast you can change between them, and how exactly you want that to sound no matter what you play it from, in whatever part of the song, whatever part of the neck. So that's very, very key. Your mental focus and how much you're warmed up at the time can affect tone. Unless you play a lot, like you're in a band and you're playing like regularly, like hours and hours, a few times a week, you might notice that when you pick up your guitar for the first time in a few days, it might take you a little while to get back up to speed so you're comfortable, so you actually can jam a little bit. If you go to a show and you haven't practiced all day long, you might not be quite yourself for the first hour, for the first few songs until you warm up. And not being warmed up can definitely affect your tone. And another of many things that will affect your tone is your knowledge of the strings, your knowledge of the keys, your knowledge of your entire fretboard, so that you can play whatever you want when you want to play without having to think too much about it. A lot of it has to be muscle memory, and a lot of it goes back into knowing songs, knowing what to play, and already being able to play a good amount of music so that you have all these different things to draw from. You have different tones to draw from. You have different phrasings to draw from. You have different tones that you've heard other guitar players make that you've already practiced on, and you know how to make them. And then when you want to do your own thing, then you have all these different things to draw from to put into your own style. So that seems like a lot of stuff, doesn't it? Well, it is, but you know, it's like second nature, and the more you play, the more you get used to it. And guitar playing is a lifelong thing. You never have to worry about it getting boring. You know, there's always something really cool to learn, and it's always something you can be creative with. So definitely keep playing, keep getting inspired. Listen to music that you don't usually listen to. Try different things. Play saxophone. You take a saxophone line, play that in guitar. Learn 10 different songs, and out of those 10 songs you learn, write your own version of them. And keep playing, keep practicing. In the future, I'll have more videos about tone, about specific songs that have like iconic tones, and talk about how to get those tones with whatever equipment I have at the time, and some suggestions for stuff that you have and ways to get the best tone out of whatever your gear is. So leave me some comments below. Let me know what you thought. Let me know if there's anything I didn't cover. Let me know some of your biggest factors on tone, and let me know if you have any questions, if there's anything I can help with, and if there's anything you want me to cover on tones in the near future in another upcoming video. Thanks a lot, you guys, and take care.